Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into something pretty fundamental, really. Being alone.
Yeah, it's a big one.
We're looking at this idea of loneliness versus solitude, drawing from a text called Loneliness versus Solitude, why one feels good and the other hurts.
A really insightful piece.
Exactly. And we want to, nail down what separates that kind of painful feeling of loneliness from the more positive experience of solitude.
Because they both involve being alone, right? But the feeling is completely different.
Totally. And it's relevant, too, because you see groups like the LPot Community, they're really focused on helping people shift away from that pain of loneliness, towards better connections.
Right, transforming that experience.
So let's dig in. What really makes solitude feel good while loneliness, well, hurts?
Okay, so loneliness first. The source makes it super clear. It's not just about, how many people are physically near you.
Right, it's deeper than that.
It's that emotional ache, that feeling you get when your need for real, meaningful connection just isn't being met.
And that can happen even in a crowded room.
Absolutely. Think about the feelings the text mentions: emptiness, maybe a real sense of longing, feeling kind of unseen.
Invisible, yeah. And the thoughts that go with it, like, no one really understands me, or I just don't belong here.
Exactly, that internal narrative of disconnection.
Okay, so that's the tough side. Now, let's contrast that with solitude. How does the source describe that?
Well, solitude is framed quite differently. It's presented as chosen aloneness, something you actively embrace.
So it's intentional.
Yes. It's about carving out that time for yourself, maybe for rest, reflection, maybe tapping into creativity.
It's less about who isn't there and more about who is, like yourself.
Precisely. It shifts the focus from the absence of others to the presence of self. And the source highlights some really positive outcomes.
Like what?
Things like peace, mental clarity, definitely increased self-awareness. It's described as a way to emotionally recharge.
Recharge, I like that.
Yeah, and feelings of freedom, even growing self-trust. There's a great line mentioned: solitude is where you go to meet yourself.
Oh, that's good. Meet yourself. Okay, so the big differentiator seems to be connection, but in a different way.
Exactly. Loneliness is defined by the absence of meaningful connection, especially that deep emotional kind.
Lack, avoid.
Right, but solitude, it actually involves the presence of connection.
Connection to?
To yourself, primarily. Your thoughts, your feelings, your inner world. Maybe also connecting with nature, or a deeper sense of purpose, or spirituality for some.
So loneliness feels like something's missing, something you desperately need from outside. Whereas solitude feels like you're finding or strengthening something inside.
Beautifully put, yes. Finding something rather than missing something.
Now, this is where it gets hopeful, I think. The source suggests loneliness isn't necessarily like a permanent state.
No, not at all. There's this idea of potential transformation, moving from loneliness towards solitude, even if it's just in small moments.
Okay, how? What does it suggest are the steps?
Well, first, just acknowledging the pain. Loneliness hurts, and that's okay. No shame in it. It's a human thing.
Just owning the feeling.
Yeah. And then actively, consciously tending to your emotional needs. That could look different for everyone, right? Journaling, maybe talking to someone you trust if that feels right.
Or even just letting yourself rest, process those feelings.
Exactly. And then it talks about choosing activities that, feed your soul, things you actually enjoy doing alone.
Like what sort of things?
Could be anything, really. Going for a walk, listening to music, creating something, learning something new, meditation, whatever feels genuinely nourishing to you.
Making that alone time feel fulfilling, not empty.
Yes. And a really crucial piece is developing self-compassion.
Yeah.
Learning to treat yourself with kindness like you would a friend.
Being okay with yourself, basically.
And understanding your own worth, separate from who you're with or not with. It's not about, deciding you don't need people anymore.
No, definitely not.
It's more about building a stronger, more resilient relationship with yourself, that inner foundation.
So the big takeaway here seems to be you absolutely can be alone and still feel full, still feel connected.
Precisely. The key difference lies in that internal experience, the lack of connection and loneliness versus the connection to self in solitude.
Loneliness hurts because something feels missing. Solitude can actually heal because you're connecting within.
That's the core distinction the source makes.
So a final thought for you listening. If you do find yourself grappling with that feeling of loneliness, maybe just consider what's one small step you could take today Just one tiny thing to cultivate a little moment of solitude, a little connection with yourself.
That small shift might make a real difference.
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for diving deep with us today.